My name is Holly Harpel, and I am the WSU Community Engagement Institute Healthy Communities Initiative Vista, which basically means on this Kansas Health Foundation grant that was launched almost 3 years ago. Um, I do a lot of the technical assistance with the team, and we are associated um, by that. And all of our panelists too are associated with the Healthy Communities Initiative grant and are doing great work in their different counties. And today we'll be presenting on mutual aid. And so mutual aid groups support and connect neighbors to each other to ensure that no one in the community has to face crisis alone. Support can look like direct financial assistance, grocery delivery, childcare, bail bonds, immigration support, and more. And now I will go ahead and introduce each of the panelists individually in this order, and then go ahead and extend you all the opportunity, the five of you, to briefly kind of give us what you think, what mutual aid has meant to you, whether in a couple words, if you want to keep it brief, or in a couple of sentences. So starting off with Christina Gentry. She is an HCI community liaison from Lawrence, Kansas, and helped secure a $19,000 grant to benefit the work of Sanctuary Alliance and Lawrence Mutual Aid Network. So thank you so much, Christina. You're welcome to share more.
Right, thank you, Holly, for that introduction. Right, so my name is Christina Gentry. I use pronouns she, her, hers. I'm located in Lawrence, Kansas, and work at the Lawrence Public Health Department. We're now called the Lawrence Douglas County Public Health. So I came on as a community liaison, I want to say a little over a year ago, and I've been working in collaboration with some of the people that you'll be able to meet and speak with later on in this Zoom meeting. So thank you for having me.
Perfect. And then next we have Kim Weaver, a co-founder of WYCO Mutual Aid, a group based in Wyandotte County that connects over 200 residents in an effort to distribute needed resources. Kim is also a member of the Wyandotte County Heat Community Advisory Board. So Kim, welcome, and please share whatever else you would like to.
Hi, and thank you for your introduction. My name is Kim Weaver. My pronouns are also she, her, and hers. Work with the Heat Cab, which is how our mutual aid was birthed out of the Heat Cab. Been working with Heat Cab for I think like 3 years. I think we've been in place 3, maybe 4 years now. So excited to be on this panel and hear from everyone else and learn and grow.
Thank you, Kim. And by the way, also my pronouns are she and her. And next we have Marielle Ferreiro, and she's a Chicana from Dodge City, now based in Lawrence, Kansas, and has worked within immigrant and undocumented communities across Kansas and represents Lawrence Mutual Aid. So I appreciate her being here too.
Yeah, hi, yep, I'm Marielle. Thank you, Holly, so much for this opportunity. I work with Christina Gentry, one of my favorite people to organize with, but basically, I am one of the founding members of Sanctuary Alliance and Lawrence Mutual Aid. Sanctuary Alliance exists to help the immigrant and undocumented community, which I'm a part of, and we recently passed sanctuary policy in Lawrence. So did a lot of good work. We had already had an emergency fund for specifically immigrant and undocumented folks pertaining to if a family member were to be detained for any reason. So we kind of had a mini mutual aid working, and then when COVID-19 started to affect more of the community members, a couple organizers from Sanctuary Alliance and then from other different grassroots organizations came together and really sat down and said, how can we do something that is different, that is directly going to help people, and that is not going to have any strings attached to it. And so that's kind of what mutual aid has become in Lawrence, and I'm excited to talk more about it. So thank you.
That's great. I love the no strings attached, and I think that's what I've taken from it too, and everything I've looked into. Okay, next we have Andrew Elliott, a leader in Manhattan, Kansas, and Riley County. Andrew's helped develop and launch Mutual Aid MHK, which has distributed about 55,500 in Northview neighborhood, securing housing for individuals made homeless due to COVID-19. So Andrew, thanks for being here, and please share more.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm just to reflect something I'm hearing. I'm really eager to learn from all of you. I think that's one of like the greatest potentials of moments like this is like check in with each other. So yeah, my name is Andrew Elliott. My pronouns are he, him. And just to pick up the question that Holly framed regarding what mutual aid is meaning to me through this work, I think it's something that's really making me reflect on how I understand equity and solidarity. You know, because we live in a world where our politics or economics, like literally everything is so interconnected. Inequity can't really be understood as a problem that's just about poor and marginalized people and their experience. It's also, I'm finding through this, the experience of people that are doing well and amassing wealth, or generally right now, just having better outcomes and well-being within the exact same system of folks who are suffering. So in my mind, mutual aid is like this thing that fundamentally focuses on those two principles as actions, which is like equity and solidarity.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Thank you. And finally, Dustin Hare, another co-founder of YCOG Mutual Aid and community organizer in Kansas City, Kansas. Dustin analyzes and develops policy to improve the lives of low-income Black and immigrant populations. So thank you, Dustin, for being here. Feel free to share more and also what mutual aid has been meaning to you recently.
Sure. Thank you so much for putting this event on. I think it's very important to get the message out there about what mutual aid is in order for it to become a reality. My pronouns are he, him, his as well. I want to say that Kim and I have happened upon an organic mutual aid network already in existence before we began this project, and it's been extremely insightful. We've been learning a lot from them, and I'm probably going to be referring to that a lot during this session. So very happy to be here. Once again, thanks for putting this on.
Of course, thank you so much. Okay, so now, and also what we're trying to aim for is to have a question and answer at the end, maybe the last 10 minutes. So feel free to, like, as questions come to your mind, like, feel free to put them in the chat so that maybe the panelists can also have a look at them before we address them at the end. But first, we will start with some specific questions into the particular efforts that our different groups. We have 3 groups technically represented here tonight in 3 different counties. Working on this Canva thing. Present full screen. There we are. So we've done this. So now we can just kind of go around, and like I was saying earlier, since there are 3 specific communities represented, y'all can tag team however you want and speak to each of the questions. You don't have to do it all individually. So we can start with Lawrence, our friends out there. So the questions here, and you can just answer all of these at the same time. So the questions are: when and how did your mutual aid group take off? What needs does it address, and what prompted these needs to be met in this way? How many people are actively in your mutual aid network, and what online or offline methods do you use for communication?
Okay, thank you. And Christina, feel free to jump in at any time, but I'll kind of start off. So I explained a little bit how our mutual aid got together. It was formed initially Sanctuary Alliance and the work that we were doing, specifically for the undocumented and immigrant community. And being part of marginalized identities, a lot of community organizers started talking about how are we going to get through this pandemic? What is that going to mean? People are staying home, people could potentially be getting sick. We understand that Black, Indigenous people of color, especially the Black community, will be impacted more. So how do we support? And so mutual aid has kind of just been this buzzword that was going around larger cities, and we took some time to reflect on it and say, what does that mean to us? And it's the ideology of an energy exchange for us. So it's this idea that if we are able to give something without any strings attached, without any requirements, without any labor from the person that needs something, then we're hoping that energy continues to go out in the world, and maybe when they have something, or if somebody else sees it, they can continue that change. So it's really about bringing communities together. We specifically address, at first it started with so whether that be food assistance, housing assistance, utilities, miscellaneous things. Childcare was a big one that we started to address in the beginning. And really what we did was, let's crowdsource some funds. We're living in a world where the system is run and charged by capitalism. So how can we meet that demand so people can survive? And so we reached out to our community members and said, hey, it's time for us to support each other and hold each other up. That actual way that you can do that, if you're scrambling for something to do, give money right back to the community. We're not going to wait on something from the federal government, something from the state, something from nonprofits that have a ton of money that are kind of waiting around to do something. We want to do something now. That's kind of answering the first two questions. Actively part of our mutual aid network right now, is that more addressing like how many volunteers we have or how many people we serve? Or
I think both, definitely both.
both? Okay. So our core team, who kind of addresses things on a day-to-day basis, about 10 people from various backgrounds and different community work with different capacities. We also have about 70-ish volunteers that are community volunteers that will be ready to go if we need to do a delivery, if we need to go grocery shopping for somebody, if we need to take somebody safely to another location. They're on call. And then as far as community members we've helped, we're in 300 plus right now. We're getting at least 15 to 20 requests in a week. When we did successfully get the grant with Christina, it was more like 50 people in a week, and we basically wiped out that money. And so it primarily started with a lot of online work, Facebook connecting, social media, seeing where kids were. And so we decided, let's utilize the tools that we have. Social media was big, so we started a Facebook group. We've been functioning out of that quite a bit. Then we started connecting with other community partners, such as Lawrence Douglas County, the Community Shelter, Lawrence Family Promise, which is a group that helps families who are houseless, and also worked with tenants to homeowners, and kind of started utilizing other nonprofits to really get the message out to those who don't have the online access, because we're realizing that this, not only does the pandemic kind of mute accessibility, there's a lack of accessibility. So yeah, Christina, do you have anything to add to that?
Wow, that's a lot. Thank you. See, I'm on the other side, not the other side, but I'm a Lawrence resident who has received aid and who's also given aid. So I really appreciate Lawrence Mutual Aid Network for the fact that there's so much autonomy that is created with the mutual aid, and I feel like my interjection in here, what my piece is that I'm a volunteer. I signed on to the mutual aid network when I found out that they existed online, and I was like, this is great. I got signed up, and I picked out which things that I could do and I can contribute to. I'm a Black woman, I have kids, and I could see myself putting myself in spaces where hey, I can volunteer for helping out getting groceries. I can also volunteer some cash every now and then and help out with gas. So I signed up with the Lawrence Mutual Aid Network, and my first email communication came around March 18th. And the communication was really great. It was just like, hey, thank you for being part of this journey with us. And it was signed by in solidarity and clean hands. So I was like, yeah, this is where I need to be. So the more details came on the frequency on how often these items are needed. And I tell you, like, I would get an email, and then it would say something to the event of like, we need to have a person drop off some items, and that was what we received as volunteers. And it was maybe not even 8 hours where that had been fulfilled, that obligation had been fulfilled. So these are a lot of volunteers who were just ready and willing and able, and I just tried to be one of them. So yeah, that was how I got part and got to understand Lawrence Mutual Aid.
Perfect. Thank you, both of you. I just love, like, I've been, coordinating all this and stuff, but I haven't actually known what's exactly going on, and this is really insightful for me. Okay, so Kim and Dustin, if you'd like to go ahead and share what's going on with WYCO Mutual Aid and answering these questions, feel free to tag team it however you feel.
Kim, we should have discussed ahead of time how we were going to do this.
So we're actually right at the beginning of this. This is brand new for us. That's, I don't know, are we even 3 months in at this point?
No, I don't think we're even 3 months in.
So we're brand new to the mutual aid thing, and I'll be honest, Dustin is more up to with the knowledge on mutual aid, because that's really all I've heard him talk the whole time I've known him. And so I think this is just a natural growth for him. This is just something that flowed out of him. I didn't have a name for it. It's something that we've done in my community all our lives, and we just didn't have a name for it. We didn't have a title to call it mutual aid. So we're just making it formal officially in Wyandotte County.
Yeah, I would say that, how did this come to be? Kim and I ended up on a call together, a conference call, where it was like, hey, how would you address needs in your community if you just kind of brainstorming? And Kim and I both had interest in mutual aid. I didn't even know that there was funding available at the time. And then later we got a call saying, hey, do you two want to help organize this in your community? So we took that on. We were boots on the ground. We decided to go out into the community and see what people need. We did set up a Facebook page, but most of our communication has been with people out on the streets.
Which is what we actually prefer. We like to be out in the community, so it makes a lot of sense for us to be out in the streets.
Yeah, it's been great out there in the streets. And so that really speaks to the needs that it addresses. So we are out talking to people, asking what they need. They might need diapers, pants, a pair of shoes, cash, or a pin to sleep in, whatever it might be. We then have a Facebook page where we're able to go and say, hey, does anybody have this? We've also connected to different nonprofits throughout the community, faith-based organizations, et cetera, whoever is able to meet those needs. So it's been good to kind of connect the different organizations that already exist with the folks who really have the needs. Yeah, so we're constantly building on that. How many people are actively in our mutual aid network?
We have 225 members. I'm looking at it right now.
That's our Facebook, but
our Facebook page. Right.
Yeah, so I like to call it the organically occurring mutual aid network has, I don't know, Kim, is it probably 20 or 30 people?
Yes.
Yeah. And they all fulfill different roles within that network. It's pretty fascinating to see happen. And then as for what communication methods we use, again, it's mostly boots on the ground, and then we email, we phone call to different organizations that might be able to fulfill that need. And then for the one-offs, we have a Facebook page. We also have email and a Cash App, but the vast majority of it is just face-to-face interaction.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for elaborating on that. Andrew, your time to shine.
Shine time. Oh man, I'm flying solo. I feel so alone right now.
I'll be your spiritual guide.
Yeah, thank you.
We're here with you.
So yeah, you know what? That's right. So when and how did mutual aid take off for Mutual Aid MHK? So we formed in April, not unlike Lawrence Mutual Aid, largely in response to the pandemic and just noticing social inequity and trying to find some sort of response to that that felt meaningful and practical. So we saw folks struggling. We saw a social safety net either not existing at all or really failing people. And precisely as Mariel shared, like we just recognized it's a systemic problem and we needed to find a way to respond. So the idea was actually pitched at a different organization that I volunteer for, and some basic materials were kind of put in front of us, and mutual aid was put on the table as something to explore. So we did exactly that. We kind of looked at what other systems were up and running, like way more elaborate systems. And we just tried to figure out, like, how do we make this make sense in Manhattan? Like, what simple tools can we use to just adapt this and start practicing this? Once we did that and set up a basic infrastructure, we formed a small team of what we call coordinators to kind of organize and plan the group. And we just started spreading the word through social media, flyering, word of mouth, that kind of stuff. In terms of the needs that we address, my response to that is, I think, similar to what other folks are going to say. Like, it's virtually anything that's requested as a need, insofar as we can actually like coordinate and find support for that need. So oftentimes that's looked like financial aid for rent and utilities. We've got folks that are doing like ride sharing or running errands for folks. There are people that repair vehicles and lawnmowers. We've got individuals that even offer things like emotional support. Like, I think there's one person that offers like online yoga if people like want to take her up on it. And then on the other end of the spectrum, like, we've got people providing storage or housing for people that have been made homeless through sudden or prolonged unemployment due to the pandemic. In terms of the online, offline methods and how we actually communicate online, that looks like a lot of really basic tools. So Google's been kind of our best friend for that. It's a really low bar of entry. It's free. So we're using Gmail, Google Voice, and we use like secure and public facing Google Sheets to kind of track everything. We use social media, Facebook and Instagram. And then for payments, we use stuff like Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. Offline, we just do like to be as COVID safe as we can. We've got some basic bilingual flyering that we do, and we put those up in just visible public places. What else am I seeing here? In terms of this question's kind of interesting to me, like what prompted those needs to be met in this way? I think that's the beauty of mutual aid, right? People are experts on their own lives. When they're in a vulnerable position, they know what they need. And the beauty is, like, we don't challenge them on that. They don't have to justify that. So we just try our best to have those who can match those who have need. Active folks in the mutual aid network. We've got a needs request network that's at about 80 individuals right now. That is going to keep growing, no doubt. We have a support network that's about 50 folks, and we've got 5 people that do, again, what we refer to as coordination, to try and just like tie those two groups together. And they're the team that does like direct financial support. So the whole group is like 120, 130 people, something like that. Yeah, I think I covered all those bases.
Yes, thank you so much. And I also, when I was still like researching and trying to communicate with you all, I checked out those public facing Google forms, and like if you wanted to add, like you had like every single donation that's been made like out there, just very transparent, which I think, I don't know, we do trust people, but then there's still that weird lingering need to be transparent and like have it just out there. So I think that's all good. But thank you all. Okay, so now for general questions, how I'll try to operate with this one is go through each of them, and like there's 5 questions, which is quite a bit for 15 minutes, but I'll kind of go in the order that the flyer had the names, or just from memory, because and try to rotate that way. So each of you can just answer or pass, so feel free. So we can start with Christina then, in that case. And I know, again, because you're coming from 3 different groups, you can also tag team these 2, of course. But what resources are needed to start a mutual aid network? That's super broad. I know, like.
I was hoping you gave me a different question. I was ready to answer number 5. Is like, but I won't go further without. I'm going to tag team Mariel into this one, because the resources are really at her disposal, and she knows a little bit more than I do.
What Christina doesn't say is that she is a vital resource. in person to us. And so, so first one, Christina. So we get this question a lot. We've had the honor of other mutual aid networks coming to us and asking, like, well, how do we do this? What does this mean? And kind of to speak to what Kim said, this is something that's happening a lot in communities, especially communities of color already. We've already created those networks. If somebody needs something, you just kind of respond and you figure it out. So that's really how mutual aid started. We were just like, well, let's figure it out. What do we know is already available in the community? How can we not reinvent the wheel, but rather utilize those things? And how can we do it in a way that is circumnavigating the system that keeps people in this like spiral, in this loop of oppression? How do we kind of cut into that? That was really our goal for mutual aid, was this radical idea of creating this autonomous group that would just not have any like major leadership roles, not try to be a nonprofit status. We're not trying to reinvent stuff that's already there. We were just like, hey, we know how to raise money. All of us have been in community organizing deeply, most of us together for years and years and years. We've done this stuff. And so we were very fortunate in the fact that that was a very organic process. But to those who maybe are like, I'm one person in a small town, what I would suggest is look for things that are already in existence. Do you have an organization that helps with housing? Go to your community shelter. Do you know who food assistance is? A big thing that we did was just create resource documents, because we didn't want to be the person pushing out everything and be the only channel that people could connect to. This is about creating channels and creating ways for people to get resources across and really utilize that idea of safety net by knowing that accessibility is around. And so we would make food resource lists, we would find housing assistance, and while we were raising money at the same time, it wasn't really much about the money, but rather a sustainable way for people to get through this. So it is a really broad question, and I love when people reach out and ask, like, okay, this is my specific situation, because I think it's really organic for every community on how they start it. But really it's looking to see what's already available and how you can be the advocate for those people that maybe don't feel like they can have access to those resources.
Perfect, thank you. And I love that idea that, sometimes you literally just need to compile lists of all the resources that are already there. And that's mutual aid for those organizations that are doing that, getting their word out there. Perfect. Well, Kim and Justin, if you would like to work together on this, or just literally just share what you're itching to share.
So I think to piggyback off the other comments, the main thing you need is people who have a heart for the community, people who want to see other people do better, and people who are really willing to do the legwork, because the resources are out there. There are resources out there. We just gotta be able to connect them to the people out there, and then the people who are willing to find out what resource is best for some people. That's the way I'll say it, because some resources may be accessible for some people, but not accessible for others. And you don't want to harm people by sending them to the wrong resource. So you just need to have that. So the first thing is people. And the second, of course, is going to be money and things for the people.
Yeah, I was going to say people too. So that's perfect, Kim. Thank you. I would also add that a collective goal is a requirement. So mutual aid is going to look different in every single community and every single micro community. You could be just working to make sure people are fed. You could be working to make sure people are sheltered, or you could be working together to create brand new systems that, counter the systems that are out there and actually provide for people. Since our systems aren't doing that today. So yeah, on top of the people, you have to have a collective vision and come together and work together to carry that vision.
Andrew, did you want to add to that one, or I can start you off with the next question?
I'm comfortable either way. I think that was actually really well articulated. I don't know that I have a lot of great value to add after that.
Or you have the same value in.
Yeah, precisely.
All right, so I'll start you off with the next question then. How would you describe leadership in mutual aid?
I think ideally that if there's a core group that's doing a lot of the organizing and messaging and creating this shared vision, which I'm going to reflect, like I'm going to echo that idea. Like I think that's something essential. I think all of that ideally happens through democratic consensus, right? Like there may be a need for some specific things to delegate either a group or individuals with specific skill sets for something like fundraising or promotion to raise awareness of mutual aid, something like that. But in the main, this is maybe my own hang up, but like I'm increasingly developing like an averse reaction to the word leadership. And that's probably like too much, but that's my own baggage. I think ultimately what needs to be ensured is that all the folks and all the decision making there is accountable, both to the folks that are directing that, but also to the people that are being impacted and affected, right? And I actually suppose this is the one question in seeing the some of these in advance, these questions, that I'm the most curious to hear how other groups orient to this idea of leadership, because we have our sense of this in Manhattan, but I have a strong suspicion that this looks potentially very different in other spaces. As like an open invitation, if anybody wants to hop on that.
That's fun to jump at it. Anyone?
So in observing the organically occurring mutual aid network, it's been really interesting to see that there are people kind of filling different roles. There is no clear leader. There are a couple of people who are ever present, and maybe their presence has like a little bit more gravity than others, but there is no leader. There are people who are out there knowing each other's bus schedules. There are people who will shepherd like newcomers in so that they know how to navigate things. There are people who, carry different types of institutional knowledge, or can provide resources when needed, or can provide money. There is no leadership. There is really no nobody directing anything. It's just people see when a need exists and they go and fill it.
Yeah, I think I can chime in on this. The leadership, I would go back to autonomy, right? And I think that's ultimately the goal of a lot of human services, coalitions, resources, service agencies, have you in organizations that give out and pass out resources or give resources, right? There's a sense of wanting people to self-govern. And that's the goal, I think, of a lot of resources, but I think they miss the mark in leadership. So in leadership to me and mutual aid to me, I'll go back to that word autonomy, because what we're doing is recreating behavioral and cognitive self-governance. And I think that's ultimately the goal of all of what we want to do when we're trying to help. We're helping ourselves to help others, because we know that this is a governance that takes place within ourselves. So yeah.
100%. Christina and I had a chance to talk about it quite a bit. And I think adding to it, autonomy, I mean, we have models to look at. Personally, in my community, the Zapatistas in southern Mexico are an autonomous group that have been, though impacted by external communities, have been thriving on this idea of autonomy, which really is mutual aid, right? It's that idea that not only can you receive resources, but at the same time, you should be empowered to also help the next community members. So we're creating this larger, massive community connection and community trust. So our leadership, and I try to attempt this with a majority of the organizing that I do, is that we don't have this idea of hierarchy. That personally has never been something that has been successful in the grassroots organizing that I've been involved with, and certainly not in mutual aid, where you're not only putting people's survival in kind of in your hands, or kind of in as a priority for you. But you want to give that equal agency back to them so they feel like they have power in the situation. It shouldn't be, I really love the idea of solidarity, not charity. We're not here to just pull resources without really engaging with people. That to me is not mutual aid. That to me is a nonprofit that just gives stuff away. And while that's beautiful and that does help people, it's not sustainable. So we're really looking for that sustainability, and how we do that is by finding that connection, finding that empowerment, and creating this ideology of no one here is better than anyone. We've all gone through it. And if you haven't, you have that privilege, and it's a really great time right now to sit with that and analyze how you can leverage that privilege to create more empowerment and agency for folks who maybe don't have the access or the privilege you do. So yeah, Christina and I were both like really vibing on this question this morning, because we're like, yes, of course, like following like really powerful organizations, BLM, that's their whole platform is we don't believe in this key principle. We believe that we all have skin in this game, and so we should all be working to make sure that we can survive together.
Totally. Thank you both. Dustin or Kim, if you want to add to that, or yeah, now I can start you on the next question.
I guess we can start on the next question.
All right, next question. What threatens the effectiveness of a mutual aid group? Kim, I'll start with you, and then you can pass it off to Dustin whenever you want.
To me, the biggest threat is when you try to center yourself, center in individuality as opposed to the collective. That's right. Well, capitalism, that's the biggest threat right there. But outside of capitalism, then not thinking about people as a whole or the collective as a whole, that's probably the worst thing for mutual aid as a group. Yeah. Anything you got, Dustin?
I was just going to, yeah, your answer, capitalism, is pretty much right on, but I was going to say the enforcers of capitalism, also known as the police. We've seen our community be broken up in front of our own eyes on more than one occasion, and it destroys the sense of community. It destroys the mutual aid network. There are other power structures that are adjacent to the police, the city government, state government, federal government, and then also development-centric community organizations as well that don't like to see any sort of thing occur in their city that doesn't fit their vision of what their city should look like. So,
which also usually ties back to capitalism and the money.
Right on. Thank you both. Andrew or Marielle or Christina want to add to what threatens, or have we reached a consensus that the overarching bad is capitalism?
I would agree 100%. I think that it's really about not reflecting the systems that are oppressing you. And that's all systems. And capitalism is a root of white supremacy. So not reflecting white supremacy and the systems that have been built up to protect that. So not only are we attempting to create these community connections and like disrupt capitalism, we're trying to, disassemble it. We're trying to envision a new way of living, and that is more community focused, and that is, like Kim said, that's centered around the need of all of us rather than this individualistic creation that these systems have done. And so for a lot of people, if that doesn't happen, or you feel like your own privilege is being threatened, that's when the breakdown starts to happen. That's when we see mutual aid start to dissolve is when people can't get past putting their own privilege on the line. And so and that's, I think, a big reason why we are steering away from the idea of nonprofit, because though we do see a lot of beauty come from nonprofits, we also see a lot of times systems being reflected in nonprofits and doing more harm than they were intended for. So yeah, I think other than that, I think Dustin and Kim nailed it.
Perfect. And I would like to, reflect too and say that, like, when I think Marielle, you mentioned the no strings attached, or someone did, and I think like the strings attached when that's happening is like when giving is tied back to capitalism and having so much bureaucracy and so much here's money, but here's what you'll do with it, and so if mutual aid is so pure, it seems like it is completely no strings attached, and completely absolved of any capitalist like ideologies, because like you're saying, it can even, the internalized capitalism can affect people's work in it. So I appreciate what everyone said. And if no one has other stuff to add to that one, I could start with Andrew and the fourth question: how do you sustain a mutual aid network? And maybe you're looking for some other people's input and learning here too, but if you'd like to share what you see so far, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me at this particular phase, for what it's looking like in Manhattan, and I think this probably tracks with folks, and I know you guys will give me this beautiful, articulate feedback that I'm hearing. This is just a brief pause. This is an incredible group. Yeah, I'm like gushing with this stuff. I think clear, transparent communication is pretty vital. That's just like, I want to say that that's a given, but it's a little bit of a privilege to have the skill set to do that. So I think that built into that is also the need to do things like skill sharing and knowledge sharing, which means sitting down with folks that want to participate in mutual aid on any end of the spectrum and in any capacity, and like becoming a stakeholder in their outcomes, either as a individual requesting that, offering it, right? Like, or even, I think more accurately, to do that in a way that problematizes that very false dichotomy of like giver receiver, right? Like, so we're really talking about building people up potentially, and I think that needs to be sort of baked in to the vision and understanding of a group. Let's see. I think yeah, clear messaging. Like I've scribbled these notes down here, and I think that's effectively my core message. That's my contribution to this piece. If someone else wants to pick up another chunk.
This is Kim. I'd like to say, to agree with you, to get people to buy in, because that's a big thing, is how do you get people to buy in? Integrity and honesty is really the biggest thing. Because if people don't trust you, then they start to fall away, or they don't want to give to people because they can't trust you. So even if there is a situation that may not look the best for you, to be honest in that situation and transparent. So that would be the best way to sustain it. And money.
Yeah, I agree with both Andrew and Kim. I would like to, this has been something we've been talking about a lot, just because in the disparity magnified by million because of this pandemic. And so a big conversation that we've been having as just volunteers and just as people in general, because all of us are also living on this really, really thin line of, if something happens, we're right there in need rather than being able to give. So we operate out of that ideology that this is survival for all of us. And so if we keep that vision in mind, that we need to do this together and we need to figure out ways together. And so I think sustainability, sometimes it means money. We are I'll be transparent. We are very low on funds right now. And we've been very transparent with our community and saying, listen, y'all, this is amazing that we're able to support these people, but we were never built out to be a fundraising group. We're not a group that holds a lot of money. We're not a nonprofit. So all of this is funneling through one person financially, and that can have ramifications. And so how do we envision mutual aid or care? What does that look like? And I think the sustainability can look like a lot of different things. And so what we've been doing is getting in with those nonprofits and being like, what are your loopholes? We're going to start advocating for these people, and we're going to make sure that you do your part. This promise or this grant money that you have, we're going to make sure that that's utilized for the people that we know need the help. So you're not just giving out, your yearly data of how many folks or how much money. It's real sustainable change to people. And so that's been our next step is okay, we've got to look past fundraising, because fundraising is not always sustainable. And so how do we make it sustainable? Look at who has access and start getting in there and poking and being like, okay, we're gonna fill out all these assistant applications that we see that you have for housing. We're gonna help for our people, and we're gonna be calling you because we have the time to see where those applications are going, to make sure those people have the money, to make sure the resources and privilege that those organizations have is being mutually shared. So it's kind of continuously rethinking what sustainability means, and it shifts with everyone. A lot of people, that fundraising is amazing. Having that money and having that ability and agency over it works. We're finding for us that it's more of a channel connection. How can we make connections? And when we do get money, yes, we'll put them out to people. But yeah, we're truly figuring out that it's more than, like I said before, it's not charity anymore. So how do we make sure people can sustain and don't just come to us one time, but keep coming back to us because they know that we have that trust to find them something, even if we can't immediately help them. I'll get off my soapbox.
Justin, do you want to add there?
Yeah, I'll just say that education is important. Just getting these ideas out into the ether is inherently going to make the organizing principle more sustainable, I believe. That's my extremely short soapbox.
Perfect.
Thank you for holding this event, because it's one of the first steps in doing that.
Oh, of course. All right, since we're kind of running down on time, I'm not sure, I'm happy to stay longer, but I don't know if the Zoom will just collapse at 7 o'clock. So I think we'll try to take another couple minutes for this last question, because I know Christina particularly had something to say for it. And then we'll do concluding remarks and whatnot. So for people who don't like to ask for help, but really need it, it's cutting off, I can't see on my own thing. Just a second, let me go back there. For people who don't like to ask for help but really need it, how could they come across mutual aid, or how could outreach be tailored to them in order to also change their perspective? Christina, if you would like to start, I remember you had started wanting to speak to that.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. Because I felt like this is where I can kind of jump in. I would be one of those people. To me, asking for assistance from people who are in the community, our population of Caucasian here, I'm sorry, I don't mean to start off like that, but we have a dominant Caucasian population, about 85%, very different ethnic population as far as when it comes to the diversity here. So there's about 5.5% Black or African American population here. So I'm just speaking personally, but for me to ask for help from a population or from our organizations or even a mutual aid that I'm not familiar with, I know that they came up grassroots wise. So it's not like it has a history that I could look up and Google. It came as a response to COVID. So it's relatively new. And so for me to ask for help or want to engage is kind of a little bit of I have to take a little bit of extra steps. This is just me personally. So you're asking about for people who usually don't ask for help, that would be me. There may be people who identify with LGBTQIA community, maybe people who also have different abilities, and maybe people who think that I'm asking for a lot, right? My medication's a lot. These I don't want to ask for all this money. I don't want to ask somebody for childcare. I mean, you don't know me or my child. So these are things that you have to really take in consideration. How do you do that? I think everyone here spoke a little bit to that and how that happens. It happens with transparency. And I heard that word. I heard Dustin say that. I heard Andrew. I also heard Kim talk about just making sure that you are creating trust and that you're saying it's okay to almost like fail in some ways, right? We didn't do this. This is what we're doing. But offering that that transparent, that line of communication, and being constant and have it being honest, that would make me or someone like me or someone who doesn't really engage too much with other organizations that I don't see myself in or don't see other people like me in or I don't know about because like I said, it's a new kind of concept to have a name. It would make a difference for me to continue to be re-engaged. And since I know that this is a mutual aid network is necessary because the funds go directly to the people who need it. And it's right there. And it's not as though you have to beg or write out a 15-page application for these resources, which I think is what people have to do. And I think that discourages people from wanting to get re-engaged because some of those resources ask questions that you can't possibly answer, especially during COVID and especially during a pandemic, that you shouldn't have to answer some of those questions that they have on these applications. So to continue to engage for me means that you eliminate all the barriers and you make it so that I feel engaged by empowering me to continue to want to support this even into its 4th, 5th, 6th month and so on, and then also to help to support it with other grant funds.
Thank you, Christina. I want to acknowledge the power in everything you've said and not just, move on and everything that everyone has said, but let it sit and stuff. So thank you for your answer. Anyone else can tackle this one in the next couple minutes.
I'd like to tackle it. For people who don't like to ask for help but really need it, I think the best way to outreach that is to make them understand that they're valid. They're valid, their need is valid, and that just because their need may not be the same as someone else's, it's still a valid need. And if that means if I give you a free box of produce and now you can pay for your prescription, take that box of produce because that's a need. If you have to choose between eating or some medicine, that's actually a need. I think people look at need and they always see somebody worse because they're saying, well, at least I'm not homeless. Okay, but you still have a need. So if you frame it in the framework of your need is valid and you're valid and your request is valid, I think that makes them look at mutual aid differently.
But yeah, can I add a little bit to that? Because I was both Christina and Kim, it's inspiring to hear that. And I think similarly intersect in that I come from a community that not only doesn't really ask for anything, but there's a language barrier, right? There's an accessibility barrier. And what was really important to me in being part of this mutual aid group was making sure that there were diverse voices in the group and making sure that the folks that were volunteering, like I said before, they have skin in the game. And that, it's not just these privileged folks that are coming and helping the poor, but it's actual people from the community going in and being like, hey, yeah, I'm also late on rent. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out a way to get this done. Or let me translate all these documents. Let me find something. Accessibility is what it's about, right? It's making sure that that ideology of really needing something and being valid in that and giving people their agency back, not feeling like they're a charity case or that they're someone that needs to be held, but rather that we all go through it and here's how we're going to help in this moment. I never know that if I'm going to turn around and have to ask you back for help. So it's that idea, mutual agency, that, you know, we all have to work together to make this work. So that, yeah, just to put a beautiful little cherry on top of those amazing comments, because I felt those resonated.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your answer too. As we're like approaching 7 and we're not sure if the meeting will just end abruptly, and also in respect of everyone's time, I'll try to share this file that I've put together, but also if it does extend past 7, then we can go ahead and just have concluding remarks, if the panelists are fine with that. Just brief statements, but let me go ahead and really quickly, new share. Dun, 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 dun. Trying to feel like I'm racing against the clock. This better be right. Oh goodness, wrong share. Okay, you know what? How about I will just put my email in the chat, and if you want like this a chart of resources, I will definitely send that to you individually. But for just any closing comments, anyone is welcome to just wrap up their ideas and you know, connect on anything else really quickly. Anyone can start or end.
So I had something that I was thinking I wanted to say at the beginning, and then I didn't. So I want to say that I waded into the mutual aid space with the knowledge that people were falling through the cracks and looking for effective ways to get resources into their hands. I thought that we have ineffective systems that can be apathetic, but through this work, I've learned that we have systems that are purposely directing harm and violence toward particularly low-income Black communities. And that mutual aid, yes, it definitely has to provide resources, provide food and shelter, but it also has to be about coming together to build systems that do not harm communities. And so I'll just leave it with that.
Thank you, Dustin.
Yeah, I just wanted to address, I saw someone had written a comment in the chat box about grants, and I would love to talk about how that happened. It happened with the help from the people who organized this conversation right here. So it happened because it's almost like a mutual aid happened in the grant work itself. It eliminated organizations, eliminated all the invoicing and all the things that come into hierarchies and organizations that put these barriers into play. So I will also leave my email into the chat box if anyone wants to communicate with that and follow back up on that question that was asked.
Thank you, Christina. Thanks for being here too. Well, I won't hold the silence for too much longer, but I appreciate everyone so much for being here, panelists and participants alike. And I've dropped that resource chart in the chat. I don't know how long this will stay up, and I'll email it out to you all again for sharing out. And this should be available on YouTube, so you can share it out again soon. But yeah, that's all I have to say. And again, thank you so much. And we will just end it like this.
Thank you, Holly.
Appreciate you all. Have a good evening.
Holly.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nice to meet everybody. Bye.
All right.
That's my
Oh, family joined. How wonderful. Hi.
Bye
All right.
to them.
I saw her name come up earlier and I was like, oh.
Yeah, she was like, I'm proud of you. And I was like, okay. But
All right.
well, that wrapped up better than I thought.
Yeah, and there was such good information shared, and I loved the energy of all the panelists. I think it was a great group. So congratulations on getting that group of people to share. And it sounded like all of them wanted to be able to share more. So